What's going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes are back. We always round out the superstars in our sport. This is one of the top coaches in mixed martial arts. His name is Jim West, and he heads the MMA Gold team in Sacramento. What's up, Coach? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I was just laying on my bed watching The Sandlot, actually waiting for to hop on the call. So I'm doing well, man. I can't complain.
George,
Nice.
do you like The Sandlot?
Do I like The Sandlot? I've seen The Sandlot.
You have? I thought that was one of your movies that you haven't seen.
You got a Dodger hat on. Benny the Jet Rodriguez from Sandlot, right?
I finally saw it about a year or two ago. It was good.
There are a few movies that kind of capture your childhood. That's got to be one of them. Everybody's got to kind of like The Goonies, right? But there's a few that are like that. It's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sweet. All right. So I did want to tell you something. I didn't realize I would have put the team at around a decade old, but you guys are going on 16, 17 years?
Well, yeah, it's kind of so I started, doing jiu-jitsu back in roughly 2004, and then the team that I kind of started was a different team. It was in 2006. It was called Overcome MMA. Dave came into the picture in around 08, and that's when we changed the name over to MMA Gold. So I would say, let's call it from 08 to 22. So
yeah,
a long time.
Awesome. We're happy with the progress that the team has made over the years, and so many of your fighters are well known, and they're all fighting on big stages. So congrats on that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, it was built from, we're like a team where you had a name, right? So the name, and you guys know, you've been in this game for so long, that if you have a name, it's a lot easier, right? But we had to build it literally from scratch. I mean, from 08, we put our first UFC athlete in I think 2012, right? So it only took us about 4 years to do something that most people would never even dream of without having a name, right? So yeah, everything we've done has been a lot of sweat equity and a lot of hard work for sure.
When I was going back and looking at social media or stories that had been done, primarily social media, it seems like if there's a few things that capture you as a coach, discipline, detail, like it seems like fundamentals are very, very strong to your core. And it probably goes for all coaches. All coaches would go, well, yeah, I'm like that too. But it seems like that's something that you repeat and drill over and over again in your athletes.
Yeah, I think it's part of my personality too, right? Before, when I started in MMA, I was a deputy, right? So I was in law enforcement for about 10 years. And so obviously it's a lot of discipline relative to a lot of structure. Obviously I played professional baseball, I played Division I baseball, right? So I come from athletics. So, just that whole having a plan, having a purpose, ensuring that you're doing the things that most commonly happen during the fight or during the activity, whatever it is that you're doing, right? So if you tie your shoes, I want to know that those shoes are tied correctly, right? Like, so everything has to be detail oriented. You have to focus on those things that really are those things that happen 95% of the time during the fight. You want to play the percentages. You want to have advanced basics, is what we call it. So that those people that have the better basics, and you guys know, you don't see all these crazy flashy things that happen in a fight. You see very basic things, and those that can do those basics better usually are the ones that win.
Mm-hmm. By the way, just a quick pivot. Sandlot, the hat, you mentioned baseball, your career. Did you see Aaron Judge hits number 62 today?
I didn't see it, but I did see the some media pop up indicating that he did. It's awesome. It's a feat for sure.
Tremendous. That's tremendous, man. That's an AL record that stood the test of time. And then, however you feel about, what happened in the late 90s, early 2000s on the National League side, that's just a glamorous home run in this sport. And
it's amazing.
Now Aaron Judge, has hit more home runs than Roger Maris.
I mean, you think about it, and like baseball. I mean, we're talking about home runs, but Like, I mean, I think his batting average is well over 300, right? You take baseball and you have a guy who's been up 10 times, but he's only got to hit 3 times. He's batting 300. We think that's amazing, right? Like it percentage is crazy, right? It shows you how difficult it is to
Right.
do something that he's done, right?
Yeah. So Coach, let's talk about Aspen Ladd. We found out recently that she's no longer with the UFC, and then today we found out she's now with the PFL. That was about a week in between the two bits of news. Catch us up a little bit. How happy is she, yourself, the team with the new home that you guys have at Professional Fighters League?
Yeah, she's ecstatic. I mean, super happy, and she's very blessed, and she acknowledges, the platform that she had at the UFC. She's very honored to be as successful as she was in the UFC. Aspen's in her prime. She is. It's funny because she's like one of the only, if not the only, athlete to have fought a ranked opponent in every single UFC fight. Most people don't know that, but very blessed to be in the UFC, and things didn't work out, and that's all right. And now she's moving on to another wonderful opportunity with PFL, giving her a platform, essentially the same platform, right, on ESPN. Wonderful show. They've been nothing but great to work with. The UFC was, PFL now is, and now she gets to be at the weight that she's always wanted to be at anyway.
Can you maybe share, the UFC has this weight class, but I've kind of been a Debbie Downer on the weight class because I haven't seen them sign many athletes, to be honest. So I almost felt like it was non-existent, but it was there. They had a champion and they had about 5 fighters, I believe, under contract. Is there a reason why it didn't work out at that weight with them? Especially because in this case they needed the bodies. And Aspen, look, you heard UFC president say it himself. He had nice things to say about her as an athlete.
So there is no 145-pound weight class. Let's be clear, in the UFC. I know that. You know how we all know people behind the scenes, right? We all know our go-to people and wherever we're doing. So there is no real 145 weight class. The only reason why that class is there is because Amanda has the belt. We know for a fact that, that weight class, as soon as Amanda's done, will no longer exist. So there's really not a lot of opportunity there, right? So you kind of, you fight at the weight class that they actually have. Now, was there some random, times where maybe you could have fought there? Yeah, maybe you're going to fight a girl who's really a 35, and you're going to fight at 45 or whatever. But there's no real opportunity there at 145, right? It's kind of ones that maybe you could fight here at this time, but we want you to go back down to 35 or what have you. So there's, even in the rankings, they don't even have a rankings for 145. I don't know if the UFC ever really wants it. I think they initially wanted it when they had Cyborg, but as soon as Cyborg lost, what'd they do? Essentially she got rid of her. They cut Megan Anderson, Felicia Spencer retired. There is no real opportunity there, right? Like, so, Aspen, Mr. Wade or whatever, and they cut her, and that's fine. They had to do what they had to do. But fighting at 145 for Aspen as an opportunity, as a career in the UFC, it wasn't there.
Bellator has a 145. Were they ever a player in the Aspen Ladd free agency sweepstakes?
100%. All of them were. One championship was, Bellator was, and so was PFL.
So can you tell us a little bit about what that little time period in between, what that was like, the exit from the UFC, and then how soon did that phone start ringing, and how long did it take you guys to kind of figure out what the best place was for her?
Yeah, I mean, the release from the UFC, like I said, Aspen has nothing but good things to say about the UFC. They were great. It was a wonderful platform. Obviously, everyone knows it's one of the greatest shows on the planet. So when the release came, it didn't come very late after the fact that after she was supposed to fight Sarah, right? Like, there was talks. It didn't take long for all that information to kind of come down, and then the actual final release, I think it was, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 days after she was supposed to fight is when it kind of all was finalized. So it all happened pretty quick, I think. So yeah, I mean, like you said, it was very fast. I mean, I think it's only been maybe, I don't even know if it's been 2 weeks yet since she was supposed to fight Sarah, right? That date, what was the date? The 16th or 17th of September when they were supposed to fight. So, and today's what, the 4th? So yeah, it's been 2 weeks. Yeah, it was very fast. Conversations, can't really happen when you're still under contract, even when you're going to get released. So none of those things could really take place until the actual, finalization of the release paperwork came through. But once it did come through, it was like a mass. Everyone was calling immediately. They were calling Dave immediately, offering her a lot of things.
What's one thing you can point to the PFL that stood out the most that made you guys choose PFL?
Well, I can't speak for Aspen, but I know when we were looking at all the offers and things like that, it just, sometimes you have that gut feeling like, wow, these guys really feel like this is a good thing, right? That really made you feel comfortable, really may have made you feel wanted. It just gave you that good feeling, right? That good gut feeling, like this is where I should go. I would say that's probably the best way that I can describe it. I'm sure Aspen can, describe it much different, but that's the way it felt, at least for me, right? When I was looking at stuff and in those conversations, it just felt right. The platform is the same on ESPN. Obviously, the money is extremely good. The communication between them was it just felt right? It felt natural. Yeah, just all around just felt like a really good fit.
Coach, so the first thing that stands out is when we saw that signing, we all thought, well, okay, is she going to go to 155? Is there going to be a 145? Can you clear that part up? And then obviously fans go nuts because they say, this is somebody that we feel like could challenge somebody like Kayla Harrison, right? This is what everybody's been asking for. So if it's not 155, could you see a day where those two meet up, and would Aspen ever go to 155 to do that, or would Kayla have to go to 145 for that?
So yeah, so in the conversations with PFL, that was very known to us that they wanted to sign Aspen as part of their launch of that 145-pound division. So Aspen will be competing for the PFL at 145 pounds, not 155 pounds. With that said, so the second part of your question, there is a lot of language that fight could happen, but there's a lot of uncertainty too, right? Because I don't think anyone really knows what Kayla is going to do after she most likely wins in November. But yes, to answer your question, that topic was presented and it has been discussed. But Aspen will be a 145-pound fighter for the PFL. Kayla will remain a 155-pound in the PFL, as far as I know. I mean, maybe, who knows? Maybe after she wins, she goes, you know what? I'm going to go down to 145 now that it's there. I don't see that ever happening, but it is very possible that those two can meet. It would be more of like because the PFL is obviously they're starting their pay-per-view series and all that kind of stuff coming up. So it would be more of like one of those Superfight type things, right? And Aspen would absolutely do it. And yes, it has been talked about.
So part of me is like, yes. And the other part's, oh, man. Okay, so you're saying that in 2023, more than likely they'll compete in different divisions if Kayla stays with PFL.
I would venture to say yes. They will compete in different divisions.
Oh man,
I don't see much of a need. But what would happen is,
yeah,
because they are both really big names, and I will tell you, it has been talked about them fighting. Where that fight would happen, maybe it's one of those things where they do the super fight and it's at 150 pounds, or they do it at 155. Who knows? Aspen will fight Kayla. She has nothing but respect for her, but of course, why wouldn't you fight her, right? Like, Aspen's one of the best grapplers on the planet. So, if that's what it comes down to and they fight, then great. I mean, they're both going to make a lot of money, and I'm sure a lot of people want to see it. So we'll see. We'll play that card when it comes. But as of right now, that's not what the first kind of thing that is going to happen.
What weight class would you rather this fight happen if and when it does?
You'd have to ask Aspen. To me, I don't care. Aspen's naturally a big girl. She's not little by any stretch of the imagination. So I would defer to Aspen on that. I don't, because I'm not the one that's fighting. To me, as a coach, we're going to train the things that we feel like we need to train, and regardless of the weight, I think it's an awesome fight to see and watch. I think we all know what type of fight it would be. But as far as the weight, I don't really care, but maybe Aspen does, so maybe it's more of a question for her.
Okay, so you're not saying no to 155, but you'd rather let her answer that question. I get it. I totally get it. But I also believe there's a coach's perspective in terms of you sometimes can know certain things about the athlete, maybe that they don't either know or want to admit. So I wanted to ask you, where do you think the best Aspen Ladd is? Is it 45? If 140 existed somewhere, would it have been 140? Like, did she just need the 5 extra pounds? Did she need the extra 10? And then we even mentioned right now that 150 would be the point where maybe Kayla met with Aspen. And by the way, I'm not sure if you knew this, but she did do one fight at 145 when she fought at Invicta.
I did, yeah. She fought Courtney King at Invicta. Yeah. So no, I 145 pounds. Well, if we're playing hypotheticals, yeah, I mean 140 Aspen can make. It's still hard for her to get down there. It was always going to be a 50-50 shot whether or not Aspen was going to make 135. Everyone knew that. It wasn't like we were keeping a secret. Like, it's very difficult. And the other thing is I'd say 60 to 70% of those females that try to make bantamweight in the UFC now are probably smiling because, let's be honest, like Macy Chiasson, I think she's missed weight 3 times at bantamweight. In fact, I think she's missed weight at 145 in the UFC. Irene Aldana's missed 2 or 3 times. Ketlin Vieira's missed 1 or 2 times, right? Like, so these girls are big, right? So I think what it does is it opens up a lot of opportunity for a lot of people if they choose to go that route. If there was a 140-pound weight class, sure, that would be an applicable thing, and Aspen could do that, but it's not there. And 145, she feels very comfortable. I know when she fought Norma at that weight, I think it was like 7 or 8 days notice they called and they're like, "Hey, will you please do this?" She's like, "Well, of course I'll do it," and she's like, "Yeah, I didn't, the strength was not an issue." Aspen's extremely strong physically. So yeah, I mean, at 140, if hypothetically, sure, that would be great. But 145 is a great weight class for her. And remember, it's a weight class. It's not a height class, right? Like, everyone's like, well, but she's kind of short, but it's not a height class.
Mm-hmm. Have you been told, will it be the same format as the other weight classes, regular season, playoffs, $1 million prize, or are they just starting with having a weight class and just featuring her in some?
It will be the exact same format, yes.
Oh,
yes.
Okay.
But because they are now introducing these, if you noticed on that November 25th card, they have the title fights and then they have what's called the showcase fights on the main card or whatever. Mm-hmm. So they're starting to do that. So that would be like something where maybe next year they're like, okay, Aspen, you've beat some people up. Kayla, we're going to do this showcase fight now, and we're going to pay you a lot of money to do it, right? Like, so that's where something like that may go down, right? But yes, it will be the same format as they do now. The seasons and they will just be a new weight class in the season. Maybe there's other ones too. I don't know. Maybe they're adding a middleweight weight class for the men. I'm not sure. But there will be, in fact, a 145-pound women's division.
Was it all her decision, or did you get a chance to have input? And just in case the audience doesn't know, because during the pandemic, we gained 80% new fans to the sport. So I feel like a lot of them might be noobs. Jim is, correct me if I'm wrong, head coach and also significant other of Aspen. So that's why I asked the question of input. I imagine maybe you did or maybe you didn't. I don't know.
No, you know what? I don't really. No, I mean, this was Aspen's decision. She's a grown woman. She makes those decisions. If I'm asked for my input, or my opinion, of course I'll give it. I mean, I'm in those conversations and I hear a lot of it. But obviously she'll ask my opinion just as she'll ask Dave, and she'll ask her other coaches the same thing. If I'm asked for it, I will give my opinion on those business type things and kind of the nuances behind it. But generally speaking, I mean, she's a very intelligent woman. She makes those decisions on her own. Those are not mine. But again, as a coach, she will ask my opinion, and I will give the best opinion that I think I can, and she will ask her other coaches and Dave, just like I said, and they'll give their opinion as well. And ultimately, it's up to her. And she felt that the PFL was just an amazing match, and it didn't take long for her to decide it.
The first thing I thought of was, especially with knowing her and how driven she is. I mean, that's a busy schedule, which will be good because obviously with the injury and some of these fight opportunities that fell through because of the weight misses, you only get paid if you fight. So this is a chance to make some bank. We know PFL's writing some good checks. We saw some salaries released from the state of Georgia, and then the $1 million. Like I was like, that really seemed like a great financial decision, aside from however they made her feel on the competition side too.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, she is making considerable more amount of money than she was in the UFC, right? And has potential to make an exponential amount of more money, right?
Wow.
So yes, those things that's all true. And Bellator was not paying anything cheap either. I'll tell you that. They offered a lot of money as well. So yeah, it was just all those things. I think the platform, being on ESPN, she's something that's familiar to her, right? The PFL being on ESPN as well. She's just the vibe of them. They just really come off like you and I, right? Just talking to you and I, just like normal guys. Yes, it's a business, but they're very down to earth, very willing to, say that they really want you, and we're here to, for the athlete and the fighter and all that stuff. And we get it's a business. It's supposed to be. That's normal. But you can also be a human at the same time. And I think that's where it just really it really felt good to her, from how I understand it and why she made her decision the way she did.
Just a couple more questions, and we thank you for the time here. How often did her and Sarah ever train together? Because I know when Team Alpha Male and MMA Gold at one point about 2-3 years ago started training together. So was there ever any overlap there with when McMahon was there, that they were either great training partners, friends, or anything like that?
No. So yeah, that kind of that partnership you're talking about, that with Alpha Male and MMA Gold, that kind of started when Aspen fought Yana back in December of 2019. That's kind of about when it started. But Sarah, soon thereafter, that had basically left Alpha Male and started her own team in Sacramento also. So they never trained. I don't think they ever would have anyway. One of my other girls that's an Invicta, Autumn Norton, she trained with Sarah, I think once or something, but Aspen and Sarah never trained. But like I said, she had left Alpha Male not too long after we kind of built that partnership.
the last question also pertains to this, and I thought maybe it had to do with, again, them possibly knowing each other, and I don't know how close they may have become, or I guess they weren't. But when I found out that the fight wasn't going to happen, it was because of 2 pounds. I didn't know if McMahon and her team was just, hey, we're sticklers. These are the rules. We're not going to do it. So many fights get made when someone misses by 2 pounds. Can you bring us back to?
I've never. I mean, there you go. I mean, have you ever? Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, how often do you ever see fighters not fight for a pound or two, right? I mean, she was 1.8 pounds over, right? She had her clothes on, so it made it 2. So it was like actual real weight. She was 1.8 pounds over.
Mm-hmm.
Just fine. I mean, Aspen owns the fact that she missed weight. That's not like she owns it, right? But Aspen even we wanted to fight. Sarah didn't, and that's obviously her prerogative. But yeah, I mean, how often do you ever see fighters not fight, right? Like, it just almost comes off like I don't think Sarah wanted to fight. I mean, I'm making an assumption there, of course, but who doesn't fight for 1.8? I mean, if you're just doing it simply out of principle, all right, whatever, that's your prerogative. But I don't know. Fighters don't do that. I mean, they just don't.
Mm-hmm.
But she did, and that's her choice. That's fine.
I lied. I got one more. And it was Fluffy related. They asked him, who do you want next? And he goes, man, I don't even follow UFC. I don't watch. There was some curse words in there. You know what I mean? So it reminds me of Cowboy Cerrone. He doesn't watch UFC either. A lot of these guys and girls,
he really doesn't
watch the sport they fight, and that's it. But how true is that? And if that in fact is the case, can the coaches maybe tell them, hey, say this, say that, at least? Because you know how sometimes you can pick up some momentum. I think Fluffy is very marketable, likable. He's got a great style. He can submit you, can knock you out. Yeah. And I feel like if he just says, this is what I want to fight in November at Madison Square Garden versus that guy, he'll get it.
So it's funny. I mean, Anthony and I have been training Anthony since he was almost 19 when he first started training with us. So almost his whole career, his last couple amateur fights and into his entire pro career, he's been with us. So that's him, man. He truly doesn't. I mean, he completely relies on me to kind of navigate that and who I think he should fight. And so it's a lot of pressure on me too, right? Like, oh shit, I gotta make sure that I'm, really on top of my P's and Q's. Like, fuck, I gotta, and study and all those things and really lay out the plan. So what he says is 100% true. That's Anthony to a T. I mean, there's things that obviously he probably could go on the mic and be like, hey, hell yeah, I want to fight at this time and do that. And he probably would get it. And he kind of does. It's more behind the scenes though.
Right.
He'll do it, with the matchmaker and kind of just, hey, I'd really like to fight this guy. Like, I know he and I were talking the other day, and I said, hey, I think it's time to go after Gerald Meerschaert. And he's like, yep, I want to fight that guy. He's always wanted to fight that guy. And ranking wise, it kind of makes sense. I think Gerald's 18 and Fluffy's 22. So, and all the other guys that are in that 15 to 25, they're all booked. If you go and look, they're all fighting each other. So I don't know if management has gone that and talked to UFC brass yet and indicated those things, but I do know that that's someone he'd really like to fight, and I think it's a great matchup and a really good next step.
Coach, thank you so much for joining us here on a Tuesday night. We really, really appreciate it. And we're happy for you and the rest team, Ladd and Aspen herself. I think that's a great home for her. Can't wait to see her compete, especially now that it appears that they have they're adding a division and possibly others. So that's just even more work for the fighters that are out there.
It's awesome. More opportunity, the better, right? Like I said, the UFC was great. The UFC is great. They were great to her. That she built a fantastic name, was very successful there, and things change, and this is one of those, and she's very happy, and it's going to be a great new venture.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again for talking to us here on MMA Junkie Radio, and we'll talk to you again soon.